Gonzaga Nation talking Zags, episode 23, aka season finale. Adam Morrison, Dan Dickau. We've enjoyed talking Gonzaga hoops, WCC hoops, college hoops over the course of the year. This is the last episode of the year. Mo, it's been a good year. It's been a long year.
It's been a fun one. It's been up and down, and 9 straight Sweet 16. So it was capped off with a good tournament run and a lot to talk about, a lot to cover.
Yeah, 27-8, the 9 straight Sweet 16s that you mentioned. We came in to this season with high expectations of the team, and rightfully so. Graham Ike, Ryan Nembhard were terrific additions. Steele Venters was a great addition, and then unfortunately he got hurt. I think at the start of the year, had you said, hey, they're going to a Sweet 16, I would have taken it.
Yeah.
Looking back, do you think this team met or exceeded expectations? Both from the start of the year, but then also in that mid-stretch where there's some question marks?
Well, I think at the start of the year, it was fair just going off guys' accolades. Nembhard had a fantastic tournament, was great at Creighton. And then Ike was, player of the year at Wyoming, but didn't play for 18 months before that. And then Venters was Big Sky player of the year. So if you look at accolades, you're like, okay, maybe this team is a legit Final Four team. And then as the year started, reality sets in because guys are new roles, chemistry. Like I said, Graham hasn't played in 18 months. So just that factor, having 2 guards in the backcourt that were kind of ball dominant. So then it turned into, all right, we can make a run, but we can't be a prisoner of our own success, and we have to be realistic with some of the expectations that we really got to put in this team. So I think all in all, it was a fantastic year. There was a dip in the middle of the season, but also, we lost to Purdue. We lost to UConn. We've talked about this on a previous episode. Some of our losses were against tournament teams.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like we were, having some real stumbles. It was games where mismatches or what have you, or neutral courts, and it just didn't work out. But I really think the team gelled together, especially after that Kentucky win. And had a great season. I ran into a buzzsaw again in the tournament, but had a legit chance to make another deep run. And 9 straight Sweet 16s is unbelievable.
I mean, since the tournament expanded from 32, when it was 32, I think Carolina had the most Sweet 16s at like 14 or something. So really you only had to win 1 game at that point.
Yeah.
So since it's moved to 64, 68, us and I think Duke have the longest streaks at 9, which is incredible. But those 8 losses, if you touched on it, 2 were against Purdue, 1 was against UConn. I thought they were in both Purdue games.
Yes.
The UConn game is the only one really that I watched the first 10 minutes. I was like, this isn't good.
Yeah.
But then you lose to San Diego State, who made the Sweet 16. St. Mary's obviously made the tournament. The only 2 non-tournament teams they lost to, Santa Clara and UW.
Yeah.
And those were close games that really – the UW game, the final score doesn't show it was a 1-possession game, but it was a 1-make game. If they make one more shot down the last 3 minutes of the game.
Yeah, no.
So I mean, the fact of the matter is they continue to just play such a tough schedule and rise to the challenge, rise to the occasion. I guess where I wanted to kind of ask you was, UConn clearly showed they were the best team in the country last night by beating a good Purdue team handily by 15 or so. When you look at the main differences between those 2 teams and Gonzaga this year, what was it?
Well, I think obviously UConn has the best depth in the country. Okay, so that's for any club. And then they just have a great mix of obviously great backcourt with depth there too. But then size, but it's pro size 7'1", 7'2" with Klingon. So I think that makes a big difference. Our depth was an issue this year with Venters going out. We started moving to about a 7-man rotation, sometimes 6.5 really. And our guards played a ton of minutes, which is not a bad thing. You can go devil's advocate either way on some of that stuff. But if you're like a UConn, you can throw multiple defenses. You don't have to worry about foul trouble. You know what I mean? So when you have that type of depth, it just makes it really difficult for other teams to overcome that. So I think we have a chance to beat a team like UConn if we played them again, which we get the opportunity next year. But I think just at that Climate Pledge game was just, like you said, the first 10 minutes, I was looking at Huddy like,
Yeah.
all right.
Well, I had one UConn game this year, and granted they played a really bad DePaul team, but going to their shoot around and then watching their pregame prep, you know when you've been around it, when there's a coach that just does things a little differently, attention to detail, holds guys to a high level of expectation, and then when the guys buy in.
Yeah.
That team was bought in
100%.
from what I saw in person, but then obviously on TV.
Yeah, and like I think the Hurley brothers, especially Bobby or the one at Arizona State, they get a bad rap for yelling at guys. But if you get teams to buy in, when you're yelling, it's because you have the expectations, and then guys are accepted and move on and play the right way. So I think he's got the group that just understands that it's all about, you know, the team. I know this is all cliche stuff, but if we form together, we're all going to be successful. And he turned guys into pros that probably weren't pros. They had 2 last year.
Yeah.
They say the Klingon kid's probably going to get drafted, and as a big, that, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
nowadays,
I mean, he's projected higher than Edie now in draft boards.
A lot of people like him because he moves better. And there's nothing against Zach. Edie was fantastic, but his ability to move and protect the rim, he could be like a Zubac or, you know what I'm saying? So he's just done a terrific job of finding the right mix, and defensively, they're the best team I've seen in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, their ability to switch everything, and then how big their guards are, and then you can funnel everything to the paint. And it's not like he just has that kid plug Klingon the whole time. He actually was out showing, you know what I mean? So it's not like, all right, he's got a big, you can at least, let's make 14-footers tonight, maybe we can beat him. Multiple pick and roll actions, all that stuff. So great team.
They're obviously, they won the national title. Purdue was in the championship game. That has become the standard for Gonzaga. The craziness, though, is the game's over, and within like an hour, you get all these different websites, next year's top 25. I didn't look at a lot of them, but I looked at a couple of headlines. I mean, Gonzaga's already talked about preseason top 5 next year. We don't even know who's on the roster yet, because I hate to say it, but I'm sure there's going to be a couple guys leave. They might be a couple more additions. At what point do you actually buy into, hey, that's a legitimate time to put together a preseason poll?
I think after guys are enrolled makes sense. But again, it always fluctuates, and I think those things are more for television or radio, whatever, to hype up games. Because like I said, look at this year, like we had a stretch where we were okay, but we weren't great. But if you looked at our roster, with the accolades I mentioned earlier, then it was like, oh, this is a top 15 team, which we were. We just had a couple stumbling blocks. But it took us a while to gel. So, I don't know. I think some of that stuff just to fill space.
Well, I mean,
there's stuff like that.
There's a long period of time where, you're trying to continue to generate interest and stay relevant. I think one of the things is, though, Gonzaga basketball is relevant nearly year-round now.
Yeah, of course.
The transfer portal was great last year in getting Nembhard and EK. Let's take a look at both of those guys. We've already touched a lot on how they both improved throughout the course of the year, but I still think there's growth for both of those guys. I'll go first in regards to Nembhard, and then maybe you touch on EK. But I think Nembhard did a tremendous job of, after that first third of the year, figuring out the pace that he wants to play at, Coach Few wants him to play at, and then the pace that others can play with him at. So I think he's got that figured out. I think the shooting was a real question early. He took better shots down the second half of the season. His numbers improved. His form, his mechanics show you that he can be a good shooter. I don't think he's ever going to be an elite shooter, because those guys are just different. But I think his numbers across the board can be much better in regards to scoring it and shooting percentages next year. If he stays with the assist-to-turnover ratio and the assists per game like he had this year, I mean, we're talking again about another all-time year for a Gonzaga point guard with assists. So that's kind of what I see in Nembhard. If you want to add to Nembhard, or if you just want to go.
Well, I think you hit a lot of stuff on the head. I think in the first half of the season, he was pressing too much, trying to make things happen. And it wasn't in a selfish manner. It was just, like you said, the pace. He was getting to the teeth of the defense, but sometimes looking to score too much or taking shots that are not great shots. And then once he just slowed down, like literally half a count, he was tremendous. The shot was starting going in. he wouldn't take as many difficult runners, but then the defenses started collapsing. Then he could make some, but he was going off 2 instead of doing. Remember, he was doing a lot of.
He was doing the
stuff.
one. It was same leg, same hand finish. So Steve Nash finish, which is a great shot, but when there's pressure defensively, it's a bad one.
It's hard, and it's one of those. It's an elite shot. It's go off 2 and just make it type of deal. So I thought he was kind of the MVP the later half of really turning us around. Because like if you look at the Kentucky game. Didn't have a great shooting game, but remember all those, we ran that pick and roll motion that Iverson cut in the pick and roll, and he like led making the right decision probably 6 times in a row, and it led us to come back and we won. And I think he really just slowed down his ability to make plays, and it just really helped the whole club. Getting into Graham, I thought he was similar to Ryan. A little bit pressing earlier in the season. Once he started understanding to get deeper post touches, he was playing at a, All-American level.
Yeah.
That's why he got the honorable mention,
yeah.
right? So I thought it was a great year, especially after not playing the year before. He really grew as a defender. If you watched his Wyoming games, he plugged on every ball screen. He didn't even move. Right now we had him showing and switching and stuff you have to do to play at a high level. So I think if he can go into next year understanding deeper post touches, obviously work on his outside shot, that's going to help everybody. He'll have another tremendous year. I thought he was a legitimate candidate. We talked about it before that he could have been Player of the Year in the West Coast Conference. So I think it was a great year coming off an injury, coming off expectations being West Coast Conference Player of the Year. And I think he did a good job of managing smaller minutes than he probably expected. It's not like he got hosed, but there would be some games you're like, oh man, he only played 19.
Well, and I think a lot of that was due to the fact that if you talk to the coaching staff last summer, fall, like they were like, we're just bringing him along slowly.
Yeah.
Because he had that major foot injury, and I thought the staff did a really good job of managing his minutes, getting him through the year where that never flared back up and he had to miss a game. Because I think that's overlooked is,
that's a good point.
You have to have kind of an art to ramping up your team to be great at the right times, but you also have to ramp up your key guys' minutes to be productive and at their peak at the right time.
Yeah, no, and you bring up a very good point. Like a foot injury is awful. Obviously, it's not something you can really battle through.
Yeah.
You're completely ineffective. So I think a lot of people do forget that side of bringing them along slowly. Making sure that he's healthy for March. But that's easier said than done because guys can leave. So then if they get mad that you're not playing a ton of minutes, they can leave right away. So it is an art. But I thought he had a tremendous year, and I thought he really responded. After that UConn game, remember, obviously I'm sitting next to the bench, and Fuey challenged him mid-game.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a great exchange they had. And I think after that game, he kind of answered the bell most of the times. He had that stretch where it was like 9 straight 20s or 19 points, or about basically 20 a game. Was terrific. So I think he's just there's always things you can improve on. Conditioning is always something for college players. You understand that, right? You think you're in shape, but you're really not. So I think he had a tremendous year. I think they both did. I'm interested to see Steele next year, but I think we have to have real expectations coming off an ACL. I've had one. Yeah. You got to understand the kid might take him a while to get his legs under him.
Well, let's touch on Steele then, because I know you mentioned the ACL. I've had knees, but nowhere to that extent. I mean, as a shooter or a scorer like you were, so much of it is cutting and then balance on the catch to elevate into your shot. What are the stages of kind of working through those in your workouts, but also mentally knowing you're back?
Yeah, I mean, they clear you after 6, 7, 8 months, but you don't feel right probably until at least 12, 13, 14, just to be able to move and comfortably play out there. So that's what I mean. I guess the best part of his injury, if there is one, is he had it early in the season. So he'll be 12 months. So he should be cleared in that regard, but it takes a while mentally just to trust it. And it's a very good point. As a shooter or a wide pin down guy, you got to always set up your cut, right? And then you got to have your feet balanced under you. So my point is, I'm not saying he can't do it. That's not even close. I'm saying real expectations need to be for the kid next year, and let him come along slowly, like come off the bench, play spot minutes, and then build into it, and don't expect him to score 15 a night or whatever he was at Eastern right away. It's an ACL is a real injury. You know, it's a major injury.
And that goes along with what they did with EK, is bring him along slowly. You know, and I think, and I don't want to put out a starting lineup yet because it's still too early. There could be guys out, some guys coming in, but imagine having that sniper off the bench that can extend the defense 7-8 feet behind the line. I mean, that gives Graham more spacing. Because I think one of the things that's got lost a lot of times is the fact when Graham became dominant, we also started shooting the ball better from the three-point line.
100%. I think you hit it right on the head. When he became dominant, got lower paint touches, and where the double team didn't matter as much, and then he started passing out of it better. That's when we got wide open threes. I mean, like the game that comes to mind is the tournament in San Francisco. I think they doubled so low. I mean, Gregg was literally shooting workout shots. You know, right?
And catch and shoot.
It was catch and shoots, and I think that's a kind of a stat that doesn't get brought up, or a reason why we're shooting better is lower paint touches. Guys swinging the ball and all that stuff. So I think having Steele next year obviously is going to help, but I think coming off the bench is probably what he's going to have to do early.
So two guys that I think you could throw in the conversation for most improved throughout the course of the year, I think can be in different ways. They could be considered. Gregg, because he got that opportunity to move in the starting lineup. And I think he got moved in because of his energy, but then his energy allowed him, I think, to just play free. And when you play free, your confidence grows without even like pressing to get shots. So he could be one of the most improved, and the other one would be Nolan. I think Nolan's been scratching the surface over the last couple of years. Granted, his freshman year, he wasn't going to play over, or he was in spot minutes behind Andrew Nembhard. Last year was kind of a difficult season at times because everything was so Drew Timme oriented, and the way it should have been. This year, I think, once he really got comfortable with Ryan, I think he started to really show how good of a player he is, and he can be.
No, he was fantastic. I mean, it's scoring average went from 7 to 14, so obviously doubling is terrific. And then he shot the ball well from 3, shot at 41%. So he was kind of what we thought Steele would be as far as our floor spacer and things of that nature. And I thought he did a good job of handling another point guard coming in, accepting the role of being off the ball, and then really thriving in it. He had some great games for us, and obviously it's senior year. He's got to make a bigger jump, but it's a good start because you're right. Like some of that stuff gets overlooked when the numbers are lower than people would maybe expect. It's like, well, I mean, I was the same way. Like every time down, the ball probably got in my hands. Same with Drew. You know what I mean? So other guys' numbers are going to take a hit. And a lot of times that doesn't even get discussed fairly. So I thought Nolan was terrific. I thought his attitude was great too, right? Because sometimes, maybe in the past it wasn't bad, but the body language looked bad. But you knew he wasn't a bad kid. And I think this year he didn't have any of that, and it just helps your overall game. You know, it's a real thing. So.
Well, it doesn't just help your game; it helps your teammates' game too.
It's just it reverberates when it's bad. And we've all played on teams, and people that are watching the show understand that. But when you remain positive, even if it's not going well, and it doesn't have to be fake positive, but just always upbeat, it just brings everybody else with you. So I thought he was terrific, and I was proud of him for having kind of a breakout season and kind of a make or break season. Right? I mean, if it was bad, we'd probably tell him to go. Not in a bad way, but like go play somewhere else, and he'd probably be like, "Hey, it's my senior year. I got to go somewhere else." So I think it was terrific, and I'm proud of the kid.
Well, I think the reason I bring those two up as most improved is I think they've kind of had to deal with the most ups and downs as far as their role, and they've accepted that challenge, and they've become this term gets overused a lot, like be a Zag. I mean, I think they've accepted in a Gonzaga player way what their current role is, and have excelled in it. You know, and I think that sets the tone for young guys. I think the 3 freshmen we can chat on next before we finish with Anton is the 3 young guys. Krajinovic, who unfortunately had that broken hand that I think really stunted his growth. I hope he stays. I mean, European guys, there's probably opportunities to go back, make some money.
Yeah.
Because with the NIL world, they can't pick that up.
Yeah.
Zach Edey made a big deal about that at the Final Four. And then you have Dusty Stromer, Braden Huff, and then to a lesser extent, Pavle Stosic.
Yeah.
I mean, I would imagine all those. I would imagine Huff and Stromer stay. To me, it's a mistake if either one of them leaves.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't be surprised if one of them puts their name in, just because that's the nature of college athletics now.
Yeah, I think Braden will have an expanded role, obviously, with Anton leaving due to graduation, and then I think he'll play that third big, and we'll go more to traditional 3 big lineup, and the substitution patterns are a little bit easier as a coach, and then it kind of gives you ease from parents, right? So, like, I bet you
it's a real thing too.
It's a real thing,
level,
and like you and I coach, like I like doing that at the like AU level, but like you have three kids at each position, you have 9, and it's like you can go boom, 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 and then you look at the stats, you're like, oh, they only played 2 minutes less. You know what I mean? So I think Braden will have an expanded role. Hopefully he stays. He was terrific last year. I thought he should have played a little bit more, but that obviously there was factors on why he didn't in certain spots. I think Stromer would be great to stay and continue to improve. He needs to have a breakout year. He needs to have like a weight room year, and that's not a knock. It's just the reality.
Some guys, the weight room doesn't impact them until you're 20, 21 years old.
So he needs to have a year where he really transforms his body in the summer, and that's not just me being cruel, but that's probably the truth of it, and he probably understands that too, playing at this level. And if he does that, he has all the physical or the skill set tools to be successful. And then I hope Kranovic stays, because I think he's a great backup, but I wouldn't be surprised because he's got to play. I mean, if you're sitting there.
I mean, he was very highly rated coming out of Croatia.
Yeah, he's
national
I
team.
think he's terrific. I think he's smart, and he's got a chance. But like you said, he had that hand injury, and then you're playing in behind 2 guys that are probably not going to come off the floor.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if he leaves. I hope Stromer or Huff don't leave. But you never know these days.
College athletics. I mean, there could be a AAU coach in someone's ear saying, "Hey, the
100%.
school's talking to me," and I heard it firsthand from coaches when I was interviewing them during the NCAA tournament. Like, "Hey, I'm getting already hit up by this coach and that coach and their kid in the portal." The one other freshman we really didn't touch on was June. I mean, he showed some flashes. He started a game early. He never was able to take advantage of his opportunities early. He's got the tools. I know he's got a lot of kind of pressure on his shoulders, similar to Rui. Because he's from a country, South Korea, that doesn't typically produce a lot of college basketball players. There's tools there, but he didn't take advantage of it this year.
Yeah, I think he had the opportunities early, and then he just, like you said, didn't take advantage of them. It's not like he played bad, but there were some spots where he took some bad shots early, and that gets you behind the 8 ball real quick with Fewey. And then not understanding kind of what he's looking for as a reserve player can get you behind the 8 ball. So I wouldn't be surprised if he leaves. It's always interesting with kids like that come from a place where all eyes are on them. It can either go good or bad, and I think it gets highlighted, good or bad. You know what I mean? So hopefully, if he does leave, he goes somewhere where he can kind of get out of the shadow a little, or out of the spotlight a little bit, and just play. Because that's what I really would want for the kid. He's a nice dude. He's got the skill set. I remember we were walking out of Pepperdine. You know how there's the foyer there, and you got to walk. There was probably 100 people waiting for June, and you can just see the anxiety on his face. And I was like, oh, I've been through that. It ain't fun, right? You know what I mean? So I just hope that wherever he goes, if he does leave, that he can find somewhere where he can just go play basketball, because I think he's supremely talented. Or maybe he stays and beats somebody out next year.
That's the one thing I would love to see more college players, and I'm not just talking Gonzaga, but the whole transfer portal. Stay where you're at and beat somebody out. Rather than be told or promised something.
It's different, though. I mean, you understand it, and everybody's thinking NBA, which is totally fine. So they're thinking, what's the path to get me to the NBA? and not saying Gonzaga doesn't produce that, they obviously do, but that's where everybody's mind goes when it's not working out for them.
Yeah.
It's just different. It's crazy.
It is.
There's no of like, like we've talked about, hang in there for a year and then next year you're going to have expanded role. People don't buy into that anymore because they're like, I got to get to the league. I got to get to the league. What gives me the opportunity? Hunter Silas, perfect example. He would have played a ton this year.
Yeah, I mean, his numbers wouldn't have been what they're at Wake Forest, but you're right.
He would have played a ton, but in his mind, he's like, I had 2 years and I'm trying to get to the league, so he chose a different path.
Yeah.
So.
Now, good for him. He did have a good year.
He did a great
I want to touch on two things that you mentioned. It was conditioning of Graham, and then the strength of Dusty.
Mm-hmm.
I think you and I understand it because we went from that high school level to the college, and then the NBA conditioning strength is a whole different thing. When did that stuff really kick in for you to be able to like withstand the physicality of the college game, and then understanding like, because your usage rates were off the charts.
Yeah.
Like everything was run through you. So there's a different level of conditioning you have to be really good when the ball's always in your hands.
Well, I think freshman year we had a really kind of different strength coach than what it would be considered now. Mike Chrysler, he was terrific, but he was like a
football.
Yeah,
he was ours. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a football type mentality, which is nothing wrong with that, but like we just moved weights, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so that part, I was the biggest I ever was playing weight going into my freshman year. I think conditioning wise, after my freshman year, going into my sophomore and junior seasons, I knew I was going to be coming off a lot of wide pin downs and stuff like that. So I kind of researched of who does that and what's their workout, and it was Rip Hamilton was the example, and they said that he used to run a mile on the treadmill and then do his workout. So I wouldn't run a mile, but I would do 16s in between drills, and that really helped. But it's also too, like, this is, people laugh, but it's true, like it's easy to run when you know you're going to get the ball every time.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So like the conditioning part was easy for me in that regards, because it's like, well, I'm going to get a shot at the end of this.
Yeah.
Coach Leon Rice used to always say that the floor was tilted for me. In the offensive end, it was downhill, and it was harder to get back on defense.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you got to make a jump every year, though, and that's part of just maturing as an adult. That's part of it. But like the way, I mean, look at our facility now. Like how much better it was when we were. So there's like no excuse. There's no excuse. No, we used to use the day.
We had that small, like 24 by 36 weight room that was for all students. It wasn't just. Yeah. So there's no excuse to like not be in shape or make a jump, in my opinion. But it's part of the game. Like if you want to make it to the next level or be successful, you have to be in better condition. It's like not even like a hot take. Yeah.
Right.
So let's go kind of a couple different quick topics here. Favorite point of this season, because you're sitting courtside broadcasting the games, and you might see something differently than what people see on the TV. Did you have a favorite moment?
I think just the Kentucky game, just the anxiety of that going in, just like, okay, this is probably our last quad one opportunity besides St. Mary's. If we don't win this, we might not make it. And then that arena is really special. It's really cool to be in there. And then during that game, there was a time when they made that 6-0 run and got up 6, and it was kind of like, you could feel this is not going to work. And we had that, we ran that Iverson action, and then I think it was Nembhard hit EK for the and one, and it was like, all right, we're back in this, and we made a run right back and won that game. I think that was the turning point of the season. It was a pretty cool part of the season as well.
Yeah, I watched that on TV, and that was fun to watch. Like you kind of see in the guy's eyes like the belief. Like, and in moments before that, maybe it was like guys are kind of looking around different areas, maybe looking to the bench for some guidance or assurance, and it was like they were locked in at that moment. And that's what great teams do. They realize, okay, we can do this. We're doing this together. I think for me, favorite moment would, and this wasn't even a game that I was at. It was our journalist Cole Forsman. he had a video clip that went viral where
Oh,
it was
yeah,
Nolan dancing
yeah.
in front of the kennel club. And I think that just shows the energy that Gonzaga basketball has with
Yeah.
the kennel when they're locked in as a player to the moment, but then the crowd and the fans. I thought that was pretty unique.
Yeah, it was. We had a good bounce back year for Kennel. Not beside the incident, we don't even talk about that anymore. But
Yeah,
you
I mean,
know,
I forgot about that.
you know,
yeah.
but it got stale there for a while, and we've had discussions about that. And then I think this year and last year, the students have been much more vocal and better.
Yeah.
So
Well, we haven't talked about legendary Zag, Anton Watson, yet.
Yeah.
He's going to come in and sit down with me and kind of give me some of his memories, experiences in the near future. But from a former Gonzaga legend such as yourself, you had to have appreciated, and being a hometown guy like you had to have appreciated the growth in his game, skill-wise, impact-wise, leadership-wise. Give us your Anton Watson take.
Yeah, I think obviously I watched him in high school. He was terrific at prep. I think they won 2 straight state titles.
I think so.
He's from Post Falls, but Spokane. And that was a big deal for him leaving Post Falls, coming over. There was not happy campers on both sides of the border because 1, he was going to beat all your teams, and then 2, Post Falls missed out on a generational high school talent, right, for this area. And then the first 2 years were not terrific. And I think a lot of people had expectations that were unrealistic because in playing in the local stuff, you just kind of like post a guy up and just lay it up. You know what I mean? Not that he didn't have the skill set, but he didn't have to use it for a while.
Yeah.
And then he had that weird shoulder injury. So there was 2 things that were kind of limiting him, but it wasn't on the surface, and it wasn't fair to or it wasn't spoken about, so he never had that. He didn't want to make an excuse, but it was legitimate reasons. There's excuses and reasons. Remember the shoulder thing? His shoulder used to pop out.
Yeah.
So like if you're trying to play, and it's always and he has to bang.
I would remember him running down the floor in a certain way, kind of massaging it, trying to make sure it's
staying in. Right. Exactly. So I think the first 2 years there kind of has to be a little bit of an asterisk on why there wasn't a big jump early, because his role was limited compared to what he was used to, and then the injury stuff. And then I think the last 2.5 seasons, he's been one of the better Zags we've had, especially locally, in a long time as far as totality of his game. He improved his shooting. He improved his ability to take guys off the dribble. Defensively, he's one of the best, reading the defense, making steals. He's one of the best guard 1 through 5 guys we've had. I mean, there's only probably a couple that you would say that you would like, maybe like BC, just because he's more athletic. You know what I'm saying? But like if you go, hey, he could guard a guy for at least 3 dribbles, 1 through 5, who would you take? He's up top, right? You know what I mean? And then he had some monster games this year. He had 2 30-point games. Santa Clara game, he kept us in it, and then the UCLA game in Maui. And so I think he's been one of the better Zags in the last 5-10 years. And it's cool that it's a local kid. So I'm proud of him in that regards, because it's not as easy as you think to be a local kid and then come in, and then not that he's bad, but it just had those reasons.
Well, the expectations were so high.
That's what I'm saying.
Player of the year in the state and state titles.
And you're from here, and you know what I mean? So like there was legit reasons why the numbers weren't jumping off the page. And then 2, like he's been one of the most selfless guys we've had. Yeah. I mean, for 2.5 years, they didn't throw him the ball. He was just like, go tip it in and
get out on the break, find opportunities there, and fall into an offensive rebound.
That's all you get. Yeah. And so I think he's had a great career. I think he's a legitimate pro prospect. It's not just because we're on the show and he's all the things I described. I think he's a legit 3-and-D potential guy. He's got to be able to make corner threes. Yep. He's got to be willing to guard Kevin Durant and have him score 35 on you, but play every possession like it's your last. Yeah. So I think he has that chance because he moves well enough. He's big enough. Yep. And there's other guys with his frame and skill set that are playing in the league that play like in the rotation. So I think he does have a chance to be an NBA player. Yeah, I agree with so much of what you said there, but I do agree he's going to have a long chance.
Whether he makes it right off the bat is hard to say because they really tend to go early young prospects before they go 4 or 5 year college guys. But the fact is he can defend all positions you talked about. Comes from a winning pedigree of Gonzaga players, which is very overrated.
Plays in a pro system. Keep going.
Plays in a pro system, but it's very scouts, front office guys love the fact that he knows how to win.
Yes.
And he can plug and play into a situation that has won.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that allows him a chance is, so many people say, oh, he's a good shooter, he can do this and that, he gets in his bag, whatever. Well, what's his role going to be in the NBA? Catch and shoot.
Yep.
And it's catch and shoot corner
threes.
And you're going to be a corner 3-point spacer.
Yep.
Those are catch and shoot threes. Those aren't catch one dribble pull-ups, which is a lost art and it's a lost shot for most offensive attacks these days. So if he really locks in that catch and shoot, which he's improved upon over the last, because he never took bad threes.
No, he just didn't shoot
wide open.
But he didn't shoot a lot of them.
Yeah, so sample size is small.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. I think he's going to get a really long look.
Yep.
I think he's one of those guys that, yes, you got most guys, unless you're one of those true outliers, if you just have to be in the right setting.
Yeah.
And I think he can make it.
Yeah, I think so too. And it'd be cool, obviously, if he does. He's proven that he can play at a high level in his last 2.5 years, I think, like we just described. And wish him all the best, man. Because it'd be cool if another guy makes it. And but he's going to have, like you said, a long look is a good way to put it. Like if he doesn't make it the first time, he's going to get more summer league opportunities, and then it takes like the right system to like, hey, we need a guy that we can bring off the bench that can go guard their second unit scorer. Then you can build off of that
100%.
and then make corner threes. And so I think he's got a chance.
Yeah. Well, last question and topic we'll touch on before we wrap up the season. It's a little bit of a controversial one. Put both of us in Kentucky's athletic director's shoes.
Yeah.
Coach Mark Few has turned down every school you could imagine, some that have been in the media, some that have not been put out there.
Yeah.
If I'm Kentucky's AD, I at least got to call Mark Few.
Yeah.
I mean, do you agree?
Yeah, I think you got to call Fewy. I think you have to call Billy Donovan.
Yep.
You have to call Brad Stevens, even though he's upstairs.
Yep.
You got to call Dan Hurley. You got to call Tommy Lloyd, too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Those are all legitimate candidates. I think Fewy's he's still young at heart, but I think he would, in his mind, would be too long on the tooth a little bit, because this is like the 10-year job, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to just pick and do this and get out. I think he's just settled here. I don't see him wanting to kind of.
Well, the reason I asked that is because it's one of the iconic jobs in college basketball. Yeah. The only two jobs that previously I thought he would consider were Arizona and Oregon, because Oregon is from.
Yeah.
But obviously Kentucky would be in that realm of like, hey, I gotta listen.
Yeah, I think maybe he takes a phone call. I'm not sure how his agent works, but I think Billy Donovan's the choice.
Yeah. And he played for Pitino, who had Kentucky ties.
Exactly. He played for Pitino. He's obviously won 2 national championships. He's gone to the pros. He can speak that language again.
Yeah.
And then I think the other guy is Brad Stevens. If that doesn't work, take him out of the booth or upstairs. But I think you call Fewy. Obviously, his success speaks for itself. I just don't think he would. I don't know. You get an offer you can't refuse. That's a real thing too. So who knows? But
the world of college basketball, the coaching carousel moves so quickly. I mean, the dominoes open a iconic job up, and his name, I would imagine, is floated. And so that's the reason I asked. Do I think he'll take it? No. But I think if I were Kentucky AD, I would have to at least make that call.
I would too. I'd give him a shout and see what the word is. But I don't.
Hey, can we build you a fishing pond in your new backyard? What do we need to do?
Right behind the practice facility.
Yeah.
But I think he's settled here. But that's just my opinion, and you never know.
Yeah. Well, Mo, this was year 3 that we did this show.
It's much better in person than Zoom.
It is. I think you and I both enjoyed it in person better. It was awesome having guests throughout the year.
Yeah.
I mean, we look to grow upon it next year, figure out how we can make it better.
Yeah.
But appreciate you joining again throughout the whole course of the year. It's been fun. I know we'll have NIL talk conference realignment talks over the course of summer, transfer portal.
Yep.
But if at any point in the summer you want to join, we'll get you in. We'll get another one. But if not, till next year, it's been a good one.
Yeah, appreciate it. It's been fun, and I like this format because we get other guys' opinions and stuff too. It's ours are not the only ones that matter, even though we like to think that. But yeah, I think it should be a good year if we get everybody returning like we described. Next year, we're gonna have a strong team, and hopefully we can make another deep run.
Well, I think the barring any devastating defections, I think this team is poised to be really good next year.
Yeah.
If EK comes back, Nembhard comes back, Venters is as healthy as can be, Hickman improves, Gregg continues on his path, and we didn't even talk about the transfer from Pepperdine, Ajayi, who's really talented. There's a lot of pieces that quietly are here if they stay together, and you maybe add one more or the right piece, maybe a rim protector.
Yep.
Because I think that is one thing that has been missing, and that's across the board in college basketball.
Yeah.
You find a rim protector, this could be a team poised for a deep run next
year.
Yeah,
I think we have all the pieces, and like you said, if we had a rim protector, it changes what you can do defensively. But that's for another topic, another time.
Absolutely. For Talking Zags, Adam Morrison and myself, episode 23, the season finale. Until next year.